Alright, so I'm going to do a couple practice problems on how to solve these using the square root method. So really you're just solving equations. That's all you're doing. Just getting x by itself. So let's start with, let's do number 2, x squared plus 90 equals 0. So I need to get x by itself. 10's dragging it. Alright, so I'm trying to get x by itself, so I need to move plus 90 to the other side. I'm going to subtract it. And I end up with x squared equals negative 90. Okay, so to get rid of, right now x is being squared, so in order to get rid of that, I need to take the square root of both sides. And when I take the square root, you have to remember to do plus or minus the square root. So I've got x equals plus or minus whatever the square root of negative 90 is. So I'm going to come over here and start breaking down the square root of negative 90. So the way I think about it is I try to find the biggest perfect square that divides evenly in here. So I've got a negative, so I'm going to drop down a -1, so that reminds me to take the I out. And then 90 breaks down into 9 and 10, and 9 is the biggest perfect square that divides in there. So what I would do now is I would say, okay, well the square root of 9 is 3, the square root of -1 is I, and then I have a 10 left underneath the radical. So my answer ends up being plus or minus 3i square root of 10. Okay, so let's try another one. Let's try number 3. Okay, so I've got 3x squared minus 100 equals 332. Okay, so I need to try to get x squared by itself. So the first thing I should do is get rid of minus 100 by adding it. And then I end up with 3x squared on this side, and on this side I get 432. Okay, I need to get rid of the 3 that's in front of x squared because 3 is not being squared, so I need to move that first. And I'm left with x squared equals 144. Okay, so to get rid of the square, I need to take the square root of both sides, plus or minus the square root, and x is equal to positive and negative 12. So because that's a nice pretty whole number, we're going to write it as an ordered pair. As long as I get something that doesn't have a square root left in it or an I, you're going to write them as points on the graph. Alright, let's do number 5. Okay, so again, I need to move the 3 first because it's not being squared. So I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I end up with x squared equals negative 36. Okay, so now I'm going to take the square root to get x by itself, plus or minus the square root. X is equal to plus or minus 6i, and because it has an I, I'll let you leave it that way. Let's do number 6. Okay, so I need to get all my x's on the same side. It doesn't matter which way you go for this, so I'm just going to move 3x squared. No, I lied. I want it to be positive. It doesn't matter, but I just prefer positive numbers. So when I do that, I have a 1 left on this side, and I'm going to show you it doesn't matter which side any of this is on, plus 13. Okay, so now I need to move 13 away from this. I get negative 12 is equal to 2x squared. Divide both sides by 2. divide both sides by 2. Negative 6 is equal to x squared. Take the square root of both sides, plus or minus the square root of both sides. And I can't break down 6. There's no perfect squares that go evenly in there, but I can change this to square root of negative 1 times square root of positive 6. Square root of negative 1 is I. So this is actually plus or minus I square root of 6. Okay. I think that's probably enough. I'm going to put the answers to the rest of these on here and attach it to all of this link on the assignment in Google Classroom. So that should be quite a bit of practice.